What's happening, people? Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm joined by Paul, who was my therapist all of last year. I'm not going to waste any time really talking about anything. It was a good chat, a bit of a erratic one as usual. Enjoy the show. Right, so my first question would be, say when I approached you for therapy, what are you looking for straight away, and how do you go about that? Because you would maybe be picky with who you choose and who you think you could help, or do you think you can help everyone?
No, you can't. I think, as a therapist, if you think you can help everybody, you're already keying into a type of thought pattern that's really unhelpful, black and white. I could help anybody, really. We all have limitations. So, for instance, if you as a therapist have experienced childhood sexual trauma and you get a client that's riddled with childhood sexual trauma, and you're going to need to try and be not emotionless but kind of bipartisan or impartial to that person's experience, you might struggle. You might trigger yourself. You might get him thinking about their story, thinking about your story, relating to it too emotionally, so therefore you start to project your own self. I've heard people say stuff, I hear other therapists, and I'm sure other therapists listen to me talk and go, oh my fucking God, what is that guy talking about? But sometimes I hear people talk about things and I'm just like, what are you talking about? Why are you
therapists?
Life coaches, therapists,
you've already went
the wellness.
I was like, let's not be controversial. You're life coaches.
Well, a life, for me, anybody that I've ever seen that's I'm a life coach is an unqualified therapist. Somebody that doesn't want to go through the 7 years or doesn't want to go and get hours and hours of being monitored by somebody who knows what they're doing and tell you where you're going wrong, getting the feedback. That's a really hard process to go through. I went through that really quickly because of COVID. Mm-hmm. So I could do that on Zoom. So I didn't need to be, one-to-one with people. So it's almost like a bit of a cheat code. I seen an opportunity, so
Did you do online university then?
No, so we can get into qualifications. I'll try and stay on topic. I've got ADHD, so I'll just bounce about all over the place. But that sort of idea that I can help everybody is just an absolute nonsense. I was talking to somebody about it the other day, and I was like, I'll give you an analogy. A therapist is like a football manager. They can come in and get, say, success with a group of people for 3 years, and then it starts to go, and then you need somebody else. So for an individual, they might go to a therapist and be I'm suicidal, and they find somebody that really helps them with that, but then they come out of that, they move on, and then it's I'm having relationship problems. And if that person's I'll just help you with that, 100 quid a session, and then they aren't their relationship therapist, or they haven't done any work in that field, then you're in a danger zone then, because you're just trying to apply the same sort of theory and techniques that would help somebody out of one trouble or one sort of psychological situation to another, and it might not be applicable. So then what am I looking for? First of all, I work pretty much exclusively with men, and then I need a willingness to work, because unfortunately, and I think for some people this is an unpopular opinion, to heal or fix, and I say that because there is no fixing, there's nothing wrong with you, but to recover, right, if you say heal mental health, heal, you need to work, you need to do something. You can't just sit down and hope that your head fixes itself. It's your head that's got you in, or it's your thoughts that have got you into this situation, and it'll be changing the thought patterns and changing that thinking that'll get you out. So there needs to be, for me...
See, when you say work, you mean a willingness to feel uncomfortable, because that's kind of what the work looks like a bit as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So that would be another thing. So first of all, a man. Second of all, that's just for me personally, because I want to work with men.
Why is that?
Because I feel as a man, it's hard to relate to women's issues. If I get a woman that comes to me and is talking about,
Well, it's like when a woman says to me, I feel so scared walking home at night. Even just that sentence, I have to go, I understand, but I don't.
It's hard to relate to that, right?
I can't, because I've never been scared ever.
Yeah.
Though I have been scared. There's been people who have been, they'll batter me.
Absolutely.
But not in the same
It's the same feeling
sense.
though. Like, I think you can relate to it. I think like there's a few reasons why. I think first of all, I think men at the moment that I get into the industry kind of needed it more than women did, and that's just my opinion. I like when I first started, it was just predominantly women that would want therapy, and it was just a whole. So I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to work with guys. I restrict my books to like 10 people. I don't really work with any more than 5 to 10 people. Because it takes too much of my energy. I've got another business, blah, 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 right? So men, they're willing to work. First of all, like you're talking about that willingness to be uncomfortable, that's another thing. But the willingness to meditate, journal, like these types of activities, like the types of things that you could go on any podcast and any mental health professional be like, you could start journaling, that'll be really powerful, or...
Well, I suppose you'd already heard me speak about quite a lot of the things that you knew I was going to come to you about. Like when I first messaged you, you would have known that I had journaled and stuff, anyway, and I'd be willing to do that without having to ask me about it.
And you're a personal trainer, so you know that, and that's an analogy that I use with people in the first session. I'll say to them, look, coming here's like going to a PT session. If you come here every week, you'll probably leave feeling better. But then, say you come on a Wednesday, see by the time the Friday comes, you probably won't be feeling the same effect for that session. But if you can top it up for half an hour on the Thursday morning, we'll keep it going. But then also, I want people to leave. I don't want people to be coming to me forever. Do you know what I mean? And I don't want people to be 20 sessions in and like, I've not made any progress. Like, that's a failure to me. So I need that sort of, and I'm a cognitive behavioural therapist, so it all comes down to the work that you're going to put into it. So there's that, and then there's the letting go of a few sort of ideas. I think like labelling bodily functions, like the pit of your stomach goes, and that's my anxiety. That needs to go. That labelling needs to go, because that pit of your stomach's adrenaline, and if you're going to watch Celtic Rangers in a cup final, that's got to be pumping, and you're going to be like, I'm anxious, but you're excited. So you're mislabeling things. It's like that sort of, like, I remember a podcast that you did with Chris
Parry. Yeah, I know exactly what you're
great guy,
about.
right? Me and you had a conversation after it where I was like, he's mislabeling things. Like, he told this story where he was like, when I go in the hack squat, I have an anxiety attack. And then he described a set of symptoms.
And I got millions of views, mate.
Did it?
Oh, millions.
Right, so
and that's a massive problem. Like TikTok is just exacerbating people labeling stuff. And I fell into it when I went through my first breakup. Being like, I did have anxiety, but like I then thought that I was someone who suffered from anxiety.
I suffer from anxiety.
I was
now.
like an anxious person.
I have anxiety.
Where I was, and that almost held me in it for way longer.
Yeah, of course it will, because you're like gripping onto it. You're by doing that, and we can get into like the.
But see, at that point, that's 6 years ago. I think we're still so misunderstood, or so the too much misinformation about it. But back like 6 years ago, it's only 6 years ago, but the information on it was dreadful.
Yeah.
Or I was searching for the dreadful information, a bit of both.
I think that maybe an after effect of C19, just in case it gets you took down on YouTube, is that a lot of people went and looked for more information and got better information. And then the rise of guys like Andrew Huberman and actual science, not no offence, right, but some adult on TikTok that's like, I know how to help you with your mental health, and it's like, this is another thing with the modern world. It's like, well, I did it, so I can help you do it, and it's like, that's not true. And it's a really dangerous sort of thing. But we can get back to like TikTok and pop psychology and stuff, I suppose, later on. But
I don't really want to touch on that too much. I want to more know the actual individual tools you use through the therapeutic process. But I was speaking about this to Jen that I had on, And like I've started viewing my job a lot. Like I think if I wasn't doing this, like maybe down the line, therapy would be something I would look at. I think, but I don't know if I'll ever do it. It's just something I would toy with. But when I'm reading stuff, I take way more advice from therapists about how to work with my clients, rather not use any of the tools, but like what people are actually going through and stuff. And I found that's way better than taking advice off personal trainers.
Yeah, of
like
course.
way better.
Of course.
Understanding so much more about people.
Of
and
course.
sack off whatever they're doing in the gym. The gym's just like what I'm using to help them.
Yeah, well, if you think about your industry, right, and it's changing, thank God, right, but predominantly it's
aesthetics.
21 to 35-year-old men. What the fuck do they know about mental health? Like, really and truly, like a guy that probably has fixed his mental health by going and lifting weights, right, which has mega advantages. Like, I'm not shitting on movement, but there's like this weird thing that people are like, I don't really want to be that controversial about it. The majority of personal trainers are not fit to help people with mental health problems. A lot of them have mental health problems themselves. They do bulking cuts, they do photo shoots, they go and they get spray tanned, they then go with their clients and eat fucking 10,000 calories worth of food after like 6 weeks of eating like 1,000 calories or whatever. It's kind of a wee bit dysfunctional, and it's usually about making money. It isn't really like they'll all be like, I get into this to help people. I think a lot of them get into it because their career, they didn't like their career, they went to the gym, they loved the gym, and then they went, I'll do this. This is what I'll do.
There's almost like two different jobs in personal training. There is people that have went in to help people, and then there's people that got good results in the gym and it changed their life, and then they thought they could, and those tend to be the ones that then start viewing it as making money. I find.
Yeah, and like,
whereas the rest of us, and I would say I'm in the other category, continue to figure out and try get better at helping people.
Yeah, one of the big things that frustrates me about the health and fitness industry is that, first of all, I was there, and it didn't help. It really didn't help. It made me feel like it was helping. It feels good. But actually, when after, like, say for instance, like, this goes back to what I was saying, like, I want people to leave. I want people to graduate for therapy. I want them to be able to take care of themselves at the back end.
Imagine me and you standing
like,
out there with a wee certificate.
But and you can do that. It makes people feel good. Do you know what I mean? And that's, I suppose that could be the therapist version of like a scantily clad selfie going on.
When this finishes,
on
we'll just
Instagram
go
or whatever.
down George Square. Get me
exactly. But I want people to take care of themselves. I don't want people to be relying on me. I don't want people.
That's the main change I've took away from like therapists and you since is making it not like their problem isn't mine, and then trying to give them the belief in themselves rather than I'm dragging them through this 6 months of training, and every challenge they face they come to me for the answer. I'm trying to actually show them, no, you have this scenario, right? What would you pick? Just like wee things like that, as in like try to get almost lead them down a path where they believe in themselves rather than I've dragged them through it.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, a lot of PTs are wanting to do that when you hear about like how much money they want to make every month, and it's about it's weird. Like a lot of PTs have pivoted into this like lifestyle entrepreneurial thing where it's like about them, and they put up these posts like, look at me in 2015, I was a mess. You're still a mess. Like, I think, like, when I meet them, I'm not talking about any individual. I'm being very general, right? And very judgmental. But, you know, we're on a podcast, we're having a bit of a laugh with it as well. But I meet a lot of these guys and I'm like, you're still a mess, man. Like, and you can see like, they'll sit and you'll talk to them and it's like, you can see the cogs turning. And sometimes they actually are like, they take in what you're saying. And then you see a post and you're like, you've not really like grasped onto like, so like, here's a good example of why it frustrates me. If somebody comes to me and goes, I want to lose weight and I want to go to the gym every day, I'd be like, there's a door, go and get a PT. One, I'm not qualified, but two, I kind of want to help people that are in worse positions than that. I've built up a set of skills. This will sound weird, but if a man comes to me and goes, I've been struggling with suicidal thoughts, I'm like, because in my head I'm like, I know where we're going to go with this. You know, it's no cookie cutter, but I know where we're going to go, and I have got confidence. So if somebody comes to me and is like, you know, I want to, you know, like lose 5 stone and get in the best shape of my life, there's the door.
But I'm the same. And I'm a PT. I don't take on those kinds.
But a lot of PTs, it will be, I'm struggling with my mental health, and they'll try and help them because it's money. They don't want to say to the person, I'm not qualified to deal with this. You need to go and speak to a therapist, because a lot of them, not everybody. So it's a money motivator. It's about, they want to make something that they enjoy their life, or and enable this other lifestyle. About, you know, we could talk about the tropes, going to Dubai, becoming an online coach, you know, start the podcast.
I think they're separate. There's like almost 2.
Yeah,
separate.
so that's what I was saying.
There's the Dubai online fat loss coaches, and then there's the people that, and I
holistic, more holistic approach.
And I do think those people are so important, because I was speaking about this to Jen. There's so many people that need therapy, but they're not going to go to therapy. And I'm almost sort of viewing my job as like just being a sound person that teaches someone what to do in the gym. But then, like, I think about 5 or 6 of my clients have went to therapy this year.
Yeah, and
I do not think they would have went to therapy if they didn't come to me.
Yeah, because you're an advocate.
Yeah, it's like if you think of someone that, one, they might not know that they need therapy, just with whatever they're going through, and then 2, it might come up when they work with me, and I think somewhat, like, so often people pin their problems on their weight, like a lot of their problems, and then they so I wouldn't even encourage weight loss with them anyway, but I almost look at it as like a experience where it's like, you know, the way you're saying,
it's a good point,
you know, the way you're saying after a year or 3 years we're working with you, they need to go to someone else. I see my job as that, and often it's therapy's the next one. It's such a big leap to go to therapy.
Yeah, I think like what you're talking there is you just said something there. It was I just want to be like a sound guy that teaches people how to squat, or teaches people about nutrition, teaches people about movement, right? I want to be a sound guy that teaches people about mental health and teaches people techniques of how to like think differently. I'm not sitting in a suit. Like, you get these guys. There's a guy that I had in here, like, I don't know if he's maybe scheduled because he's doing a lot of podcasts, and he was like, you know, in the suit, and he was a therapist, and he had this business, and he's like, yeah, man, it's got to be fun, and blah. It's like, mate, that is so unrelatable to people. Like, they're in a dark place, and they're coming to you, and you're sitting middle to upper class, very unrelatable, in the suit, dressed up as the therapist, talking about, let's make this fun. And you're like, mate, like, be real, right? Like, get real. If you there's more than 2 different types, right? There's a couple of different types. There's people who are struggling with normal life. They don't have mental illness. They're not depressed. They don't struggle with anxiety, and they go and they speak to people, and you can make that fun, right? And you can be like, look, right, blah blah blah. Then you get people that come in that are like, I tried to kill myself yesterday. How are you going to make that fun? And I think that the sort of mental health community, I don't know why, but it's been very gate-kept by people. Like, there's a barrier. First one's finances. Can you afford to go and speak to a therapist? Then the next one's relatability, like getting into a room with a guy that's, you know, never, you know, university educated, patronises you, tells you that your problems aren't real, it's just in your mind, blah blah blah. Whereas, like, I sit in a fucking tracksuit sometimes, and I'm just like, listen, mate, look,
well, that's why
here's the way that it is for me, and, you know, like, here's my story, and people find that really relatable. And then once you sort of break down that barrier of, like, I'm going to speak to the therapist, like the school teacher sitting there like, the head teacher's telling me that I've done something wrong, you get into this sort of like connected flow conversation with each other where you can actually relate to each other. You can, and then once you gain that person's trust, you can go, I have got an idea of how we can try and help this. and then they're more likely to be like, right, I'm going to do what this guy tells me to do, rather than, you know, how does he fucking know how I'm feeling? He's never been through what I've been through. And the mental health sort of therapeutic community traditionally has been that, you know, glasses at the end of the nose, like Sopranos.
It's the look a lot of therapists give into it, where they're like, you can't, they can't tell if you're. It's almost like, I feel when I've spoke to quite a lot of therapists, I'm like, stop analysing me so much. Do you know what I mean? They just look at you like that wee head tilt like that, and I'm like, stop doing that. just speak to me normally, because it makes me uncomfortable. It makes me feel shown, if you know what I mean, that you're like looking at me, even in that wee slight tilt of the head. But the reason I came to you, I was in Australia when I googled like therapists, and it's just like, you can even just tell looking at Aussies like how many of them have their parents have 2 or 3 houses, right? I know, like, you know, and I that might sound judgmental as well, right? But I know I'm not going to be able to relate to someone that's like had a sheltered upbringing, especially in Australia, right? These guys talk about like hardship and all that, and you're like, man, I just can't relate to any of your hardships, like living with like loads of money next to the beach and stuff. So because like, you get lots of Australians, right, that are really into politics, and like there's Aboriginal history, and they're all like trying to learn about that, and then they've got all this shite where they go to concerts and they start with this 1-minute speech about like the Aborigines and stuff, and it just all feels so false. Do you know, it just doesn't feel real. It's like, oh, let's support the Aborigines, and then meanwhile they've absolutely decimated them for like nearly 2 centuries or 3 centuries or whatever, and then they've got all this. So I just found them really unrelatable. Did I tell you about the one I spoke to? I was coming back on a plane in New Year, and that was when I drove down. I was going to go for therapy, and then the flight had been delayed all day, so I ended up bringing in the bells in the air. Right. So when you got on the plane, everyone was aware that they were doing New Year on the plane, so it was a weird vibe. So everyone started speaking to each other, because they were meant to come home for New Year, and now they were going to spend New Year with the person next to them. So I wrote down on a notebook like this, I need therapy this year. Then I turned around, and what was her name? It was Naomi. It's probably in this book. No, but it was a book like this, and I need therapy. And I went, I'm Gavin, by the way, I'm a personal trainer. And she was like, Naomi, I'm a therapist. I was like, no way. And
talk about the universe, you know.
And I literally went, are you free next week?
Can I get an appointment?
But I spoke to her for like, because it was a 4-hour flight, spoke to her for like 2 hours, and I was just asking her about, same way I do with you. Like when I'm asking you questions, I'm always subconsciously relating it back to like my clients, if that makes sense. So like you might say something, I'll go, right, maybe does that apply to like someone I'm working with or whatever? Have I seen something similar there? And I was doing the same with her. And then when she said, she just went, I'm not free and I live like 3 hours away from you, only do in person. And I was like, fair enough. That's why I reached out to you, because I was like, I won't relate to even her. She was really nice though, and you could just tell she seemed relatable, and she seemed normal. Like she just spoke to me like a normal person for like half an hour. And then she was speaking about therapy, but I was like, who's going to understand my upbringing, or like my mum being on benefits or whatever?
Yeah, 100%.
And from Glasgow council estates.
Lived experience is mega important, but it's not. There's other crucial factors like education. I'm not. Like before I'm saying like, you know, university educated and blah blah blah. I'm sort of painting the picture of like a middle to upper class type person, that traditional sort of therapist, like the doctor. Whereas now we get way more people that are just normal people, because the gates have been opened through necessity to people like me that were working class. I went to university, like I've got 2 degrees, I'm university educated, but I've also got a fuck ton of lived experiences. Architecture. That was the first one that I got when I was like, whatever, I went to uni at 17, which actually caused quite a lot of like, no trauma, but discomfort in who I was as a person. I
can't imagine you as an architect now.
Near could I, and I didn't fit in when I went there. Like I'll be honest, like I kind of like moulded myself in a weird way. Like I turned up my matric card for my first year of uni. I was wearing a Brazil trackie and like a France hat. And I can remember like going out in that first break and I had a pre-rolled like hash joint. And everybody was just, not everybody, like, because you're at uni, but a lot of people were just looking at me like, and I literally had like...
Where is this guy from?
But I was a 17-year-old for the East End of Glasgow that just happened to get the grades that enabled me to get into this life, right? And I had like, literally like an Umbro backpack on, and I can remember just looking around and going, I don't fit in here. And I persevered through the course, but it caused quite a lot of like...
Did you make many friends?
I made a couple. And mate, like 80% of the people that start the course don't finish it. When you go into second year, it's a completely new year. When you go into third year, so it's a really hard course. It's a super hard course.
I know two people that done architecture and didn't go through it all.
Right, near did I left,
I've never thought about that, but
I left at fourth year. And you then get your bachelor's and you can go in and do like your professional exams, and there's like another 3 years where you're like a T-boy and you know all that sort of stuff. But that did cause quite a lot of sort of identity issues with me, because, you know, I literally went to uni like pure fucking, all right, mate. You know what I mean? I was 17. I was a wee boy. You know, I felt like a fucking man. We feel adult, but that caused quite a lot of sort of identity issues. I can remember taking my student loan and going buying baggy jeans, buying hoodies, being like, right, at the time it was all like Limp Bizkit, and so that was like what everybody was
at
wearing.
Strathclyde?
I went to Strathclyde,
Do you think your accent would have changed if you went to Glasgow?
Absolutely not. I don't think my accent has really changed that much.
I think mine has, from living in Australia and shit.
Right. But that's different. I think you're exposed to a different accent for a couple of years.
I know, so as soon as like someone from somewhere else speaks to me, I do like speak a bit different.
I do tend to like, so see if I'm with friends for back in the day, I do notice that I'm a wee bit more like that.
Slangy.
And I'm like, oh, right, so go back to being more like and whatever. And there's nothing wrong with speaking
I don't think
properly.
you can really help that.
Nah, I don't think so. And the swearing is punctuation, something that's ingrained into you.
Because I know, see when I first moved to Australia, see when I was starting to speak to customers like Aussies for 3 months straight, not a clue. And then like 6 months in, they were starting to understand me, and I was like, something must be changing.
Something must be changing. But to go back to that sort of thing, like lived experience is really important. There's a load of people out there with lived experience that think or fancy a pop at helping other people that are in the same situation as them, which is admirable and it's courageous for a certain point of view. But for anybody that's there, don't go and do like a weekend CBT course or NLP course and then start taking clients. It's super dangerous. You might end up with somebody in front of you that triggers memories or anything in you like that, or you don't know where to go and you harm them unintentionally, like you hurt them, you give them a terrible experience. So like lived experience is important, but people with lived experience, I would like to see them more go into the sort of go and kick the door down to like this world that's been predominantly for people of like a different class. Do you know what I mean? And don't diminish it by thinking, it doesn't matter, I don't need education, fuck that, I'm just going to go out and just start. I think I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do feel that there's a lot of PTs that are like that are like, fuck it, I don't need to, and they go and do like a level 3 PT online, and then they're like, I can help you with like...
My least favourite is the PTs that are doing the weekend, like I don't know how long the course is, but there's like
even if it's 6 weeks.
No, but the mental health, there's the mental health
first aider, which
no,
is
there's
like
stupid.
a 2-day course.
I think there's like made up qualifications and all. There's plenty of made up nutrition qualifications and stuff.
You can literally go and get a diploma in CBT through, is it Unidem?
Terrible.
Well, it's not a recognised qualification. It isn't even worth the paper that it's written on. Like, if you were to go and try and get certified through the BACPP, they would laugh at you because you've no had your hours, you've no been observed what you're like with clients, you've no had any feedback. Like, you're literally just, you know, like, bring it on, like, start booking in. I'm gonna save the world. And it's an actual thing called the wounded healer, where somebody wants to fix themselves, and the way that they're going to get to that is through fixing other people. And I don't think it ever really works out well for people.
One question I wanted to ask you, right? So I was thinking about when I do sessions with you, I know what I'm doing, right? at the start, so say the first 20 minutes, there's something I want to speak about. I'll put it on something else for like 10, 15 minutes.
What do you mean?
Oh, well, I remember I don't want to speak about too many personal experiences, but I spoke about it on the last one anyway. But the last time I came to you, I had a wee mini sort of freak out because I'd got in a relationship and there'd maybe been 3 months in and it was new territory for me. But to be fair, I was having nightmares and stuff, but I started with the nightmares. But I'd done that, I think, throughout, where I would just like spend 10 minutes talking about something else that maybe was bothering me, but there would be something way... And I would maybe not go in straight away and be like, this is the thing I know I need to address, but it would be somewhere in my mind. And I would start by talking something, because it was just too much to go here.
Mm-hmm. Trauma dump or whatever.
I can't do it. You can't do it. It's almost like you freeze. How do you navigate that? And do you see that happening? Do you go there just fucking...
Mate, I've had people come in and talk for 2 hours about politics, and I'm just sitting there just waiting for whatever it is that they want to talk about. I think that there's a few things that I've made mistakes with when it comes to that. First of all, like, how do you navigate that? You can be disruptive and you can say to the person, can we have a break here? I've noticed something. Why are we talking about Boris Johnson?
Is that one of the topics?
People talk about politics. They come in and they talk about anything but, like you're saying, they come in and they freeze. Right, I want to talk about, what have you been thinking about the last 2 weeks?
I usually wouldn't talk about something irrelevant, but I would usually go, right, there would be a big problem, and I would start talking about the little problem, and maybe they're connected. Because like the last time I was talking about nightmares about my mum, but it was really that I was falling in love with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
But like that was terrifying to me, like absolutely terrifying.
So what you're talking about there, which is a sort of like side issue that's connected to the main issue that you've came for, you let the person just talk it out and they'll get there.
I remember you just looked at me with that, do you think you love her? And I was like, yeah.
Well,
and I'm freaked out.
That's like an intuition. That's like a thing that you get through speaking to people more and more. You go, why, why are you here? You ask yourself the questions of like, why are they talking about their nightmares about their mum, and like we were talking about this and we've ended up here. What's the connection? And the person will tell you, like, well, could be connected there, and you can give them suggestions. You can go, I think it might be connected through this. Does that ring true in people? Maybe be like, no, I don't think that is like that, but I see it more like this. And then you're like, right, and you respect the person's opinion. I think the worst thing you could do there is go, no, but I'm the professional, and I think it's this, so we're going with this. And I think too many people do that, right?
Oh, that happens in PT, and that's a mistake I've made loads.
It's a mistake that I've made as well, mate.
That's what I'm trying to learn, and I'm seeing that. It's so brutal when you can look back and go, fuck, I jumped to so many conclusions with that person.
Yeah.
Now I just ask questions, and then without really saying anything back to them, I'll just take all the information.
Mate, this is through and I've seen thousands of clients.
But there's so many times now I've just asked extra questions. They've told me something, and I don't do it. I have no tools on CBT, but I just go, oh, I understand. Like, these 3 things were happening about this thing, and if I never asked about it, I would never know, and I would have gave them a solution for these 3 things that would have made that worse.
Like,
it is stuff I'm qualified on, like even just like an extra session or like something to do with food. It is connected, because a lot of people something people don't talk about enough is a lot of people with eating disorders go to PTs, whether they're undiagnosed or because it's an eating disorder, they feel horrendous about it, or they like feel guilty about it and they don't tell you.
Mate, there'll be more than a few PTs out there that end up almost low-key giving people an eating disorder.
No, not low-key, absolutely.
Right, I'm trying to be in the middle of the road, right?
No, don't be in the middle of the road with that. There's so many that are basically like just either making it worse or actually causing it.
Like I think that the health and fitness, the health for some has went right out the window.
Even see when people use the words lean, shredded, even aesthetics and all that, I'm like, oh, and it's not helping anyone.
Yeah,
that's really not helping anyone.
and like your brain's a muscle, right? So see during cuts, like you're taking away energy that allows you to cognitively perform to like your optimal. See when people talk about like optimal performance, it's just so much of this pish about, man. Like optimal performance, you know, like high performance and blah blah blah, and like I was saying, that your brain's a muscle and it needs water, it needs nutrients. And when you're starving yourself of them, you're starving your brain of them. And people, how many people have you heard being like, I was a bodybuilder? Now, see, for like MMA fighters, boxers, bodybuilders, like they're professionals at these things, and it's part of their industry. I don't agree with it, right? I think it fucks with their head, probably fucks with their life. You know, does Conor McGregor, you know what I mean? And like, see if it was about like, you know, fitness fixes the mind, Conor McGregor these people would be the most brilliant minds. Like, they've dedicated their life to like athletic performance. Do you know what I mean? And he's a nugget. Like, he's mental, mate. He is mental.
Oh, no, I know.
Punching old men in pubs. You know, like just some of the rumours that's went about him. Like, he's mentally not well. He's like, I think that
a sociopath or a psychopath.
Yeah, 100%. Narcissistic tendencies for sure on like a sort of low level, right? But I don't know him, so I wouldn't never diagnose the guy, right? But how did we go?
Oh, mate, I fuck knows.
We were talking about like the sort of.
Oh, how do you kind of navigate conversations? But you kind of answered it for me when like a client comes to you, you know there's something that they really want to talk about, and they just dilly-dally around it.
So I'll give you an example.
Because with me, I don't ever remember ever going for an hour where we didn't eventually get to the topic. And sometimes I would just say something that wasn't what I wanted to speak about, and you just go, "What did you just say?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't think I love my ex." And you were like, "Zone in on that."
Well, that's
I remember that one. You just went, hold the bus.
I just
repeat what you just said.
You said something interesting there, and
I said it, and like what you had, like I think you had a whole structure for that lesson now, and you just went right.
Because people will always tell you, like, you know, like it usually comes out in like emotional moments. Like, so when you go to therapy, you're quite emotional. You're quite vulnerable, and you'll usually just say so. Like an example of what I mean by that is that somebody does something. Say for instance, like you, right, and you are with a client leaves you, and you go and you ask them like, why did you leave, right? And they come back and they go, you know what, like, you said this thing and it really fucking upset me, and you know, I don't think you're a good guy. And then you say, I'm sitting with you and I'm like, what's going on? See, you're distressed, and you go, oh man, like this happened. You go, fuck man, I'm a fucking idiot. I would be like, let's take that. Right? If that was a client, I'd be like, let's write that down. I am a fucking idiot. And then I would have a whole conversation about that, because that's a belief that comes ripping out of people when they're emotional. You know what I mean? And like, or when people are vulnerable and they'll go like, I've wasted my life. Like, right. And then a lot of the times you'll get people that go, I don't really mean that. And it like frightens them. And I'll be like, look,
because they've almost heard it.
They're correcting themselves. They've heard their words come back to them.
But they would say that to someone else probably, and then realise, oh, because they're talking to you.
When you repeat it back to them, that's when they start to go, I don't believe that. And then you're like, right, but do you? How often do you tell yourself these things? Because you have these beliefs about yourself that are really uncomfortable, that are in the unconscious mind, and they come out. And that's the really interesting thing about psychology is that like 90% of our thoughts are unconscious and automatic. We've got no control over them. They just come up. They're usually built for like childhood experiences, beliefs that we have about ourselves, other people in the world. Like, I had a really overbearing, borderline bully dad. It made me believe that, one, men are aggressive. I shouldn't share my emotions with them because he never validated them. It made me believe that there was something wrong with me because my dad would say stuff like, you're a boy, boys shouldn't be doing this. Whatever the action is, so that made me believe.
What were you doing?
Well, I was crying.
Oh,
like,
right.
I could, like, and I can laugh about it. I've spoken about it so many times, but like, when I was like, and I've had people go, and I've had people go, that's hilarious. So when I was like 4, somebody died in EastEnders. And my mum and dad watched EastEnders religiously. They were like a pure neighbours, home and away, Coronation Street, Emmerdale.
So was my gran.
Right, I sat in front and smoked fags and drank tea.
Every single Well, she added whiskey into that mix.
Right.
But
My mum and dad weren't alcoholics, but they smoked 60 fags a day and they drank about 1 million cups of tea. And
my gran drank tea as well, but
I hate tea, by the way.
Whiskey in it.
And people are always pure. How do you hate tea? It's like, because I think I was like a slave to the kettle when I was a wee boy, so I fucking despised it. But somebody died in EastEnders, and I was lying on the floor in front of the TV and started crying. And my dad used that opportunity to tell 4-year-old me that I was a fucking pussy.
I'm the laughing
to
person.
stop crying, right? So you fast forward, I think, do you remember the football player Davy Cooper? So I used to watch this football show that was on TV on a Saturday morning, and it was him and Tommy Craig. So an ex-Celtic player and an ex-Rangers player, and they gave like football tips. I'm mental for football. And he died of a brain hemorrhage, and they had like a last episode that they had recorded, and they aired it, and then they played like an obituary at the end, and I like literally remember like swallowing that shit back, going to the toilet, locking the door and crying until I was done, and then coming out, and my dad was like, "What's up?" And I was like, "Nothing." So through that wee jigsaw puzzle in my life, I believed deep that, one, don't trust men with emotions specifically. 2, I'm different for everybody because my dad's telling me, and you trust him inexplicably, probably to a fault, that other men are not like this. Like, he'd say stuff to me like derogatory term, but he'd be like, "Stop being gay, stop being you know what I mean?" And so then I would, and I mean this is like really a young age, I'd be questioning my sexuality. I'd be like, "What's wrong with me?" And it gave me this sort of like weird belief system. I also, another belief that came out of that is that I need to dominate other people, because my dad just dominated everybody around about him, and that's how he got through life. And I admired him. He had a lot of strengths, he had a lot of weaknesses, as any human does. But that gave me a set of beliefs, right? And that'll come out, and it has come out in my life, and it's caused problems in my life that I've had to actually, as I've got older, I need to look into that. I need to try and change my behaviour, because I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like my dad. I hated that element of him. I loved other elements of him, but I hated that element of him. But I adopted that, and it was because that was my belief system. So when people have the types of belief systems, they usually come out in behaviour. And that's a really good way of observing people, and then getting them to reverse engineer it.
Seeing what they're doing.
How does it, like, so for you, like, you're talking about, you had an element of anxiety being into that 3 months into the relationship, and I think I can't remember what we did, right? But I'm sure I would have went, what would you normally do now? You know, where would this normally go?
I can tell you where we went, because that one was probably it was a single one on its own, but we spoke about how I'd went into fight or flight, and that's what I was so scared of doing before, but I never understood that's what I was going into. And I remember I done CBT on myself. Do you remember that?
No.
I done CBT, like the cognitive distortions you gave me, I went and done it on my own for like 4 hours, and then you basically done some of my job for me, but then I was gonna maybe go a run, and I decided not to, and you were like, that would have maybe actually been a good idea, because you would have took yourself, like, changing your heart rate and stuff. But I can't remember how you put it so much better than me. I was trying to talk about it before, but I was like, I'm butchering this, but you were basically like, running might have been a good idea.
Yeah, because
I was thinking about running being like, I'm not addressing the issue. Do you know, like, I'm running away from it, I'm just trying to do something to take my mind off it. Yeah, but you were like, that might.
Yeah, but if you're in if you're in a moment of fight or flight, if you're in a moment of distress, then maybe it might be a good idea to go for a run and get your heart rate going, and then bring it back down, because your body's got like a sort of process that will go through. You can distract yourself. There's nothing wrong with distracting yourself, as long as you revisit the problem at some point. I think, you know, ideally we're talking about, you know, some people, they don't want to go and sit and face their issues, you know, they're deep rooted, they're really deep. I would always say to somebody like that's the perfect time to go into it even more, because it's just always going to be there. It will never go away. But in that specific example where you're sitting and you're trying to work on yourself and you're feeling really distressed, and you graduate into fight or flight, and you're getting into that sort of like the next step's potentially panic.
When I've went in, the thing that's so scary about that
Go and
is
do
like,
something else.
that was like 3 full days I was in that, and I'd been in it for a full year at one point. So I get so shit scared that that's like, well, I don't anymore after that session, but I was so scared, like, oh fuck, this is happening to me again.
Yeah, which comes back to what we were talking about with anxiety, where people, it's like, I mean, I'm sure I do like, when I realise that somebody's actually suffering for anxiety, I pivot into a completely different sort of session. I'm like, right, look, we're going to need to do a different session
To explain anxiety.
we need to explain what's going on. I need to tell you what the techniques are.
Get you not to label that straight away as well.
Absolutely. Don't label it. But also, here's a couple of things that you can do to actually try and control what's going on in your body. Now, if I'll always say to people, anxiety manifests in people typically in sort of 2 ways. There's the physical manifestation, which is usually sweaty palms, butterflies in the stomach. You know, maybe people go flush. They get a bit, you know, manic, a wee bit like.
And it used to be like hyperactive thoughts.
Then there's the
shallow breathing.
Yeah, so shallow breathing's another one of the physical.
I would get obsessed with my breathing. I would try like, and I wouldn't be able to take a deep breath.
Another one is these racing thoughts, which is a cognitive thing. So that's why.
So that'd be my worst one.
It moves into like this sort of two-pronged approach. First of all, like, how can we get control of the physical? You learn how to breathe. You can do breath work, meditation, cold
NSDR
exposure.
stuff.
Sorry?
NSDR.
Yes, no sleep, deep rest. Yeah, absolutely. Like a sort of form of learning how to calm down the body, getting control of that. Like, not a lot of people have got that. Like, if you're, like, for instance, things naturally, like if you go to, say, you know, no right now because we're absolutely dog shit, right? But say you go to a Celtic game, right? Or you're at the Celtic game on Tuesday night, and we're both Celtic fans, right? But it could be Rangers, could be anybody, like, I don't care. I'm a football fan, not a bigot, right? But you're at the Celtic game in Tuesday night and they score a last minute goal and you're like, fucking yes, and you're grabbing your mates, your heart rate goes up, you're sweating. But you know why? You're like, so over the course of maybe an hour, your body will calm down. You'll come out and you'll be like that. Fucking wow, man, that was amazing. You'll probably think, like, thank God. Like, you'll be relieved that they scored the goal, they won the game. Rangers are only going to go top of the league. Like, all of these things, all of these thoughts go through your mind. But see when it's like the metaphorical monster coming over the hill, you ask yourself, usually, always when I talk to people about this, I'll say to them, what goes through your head? And they'll be like, what's wrong with me? I want this to stop, or this is anxiety, and it doesn't necessarily need to be like that. So I pivot into this different training of like the fight or flight response. Where does that come from in evolutionary psychology? And I'm not an evolutionary psychologist, so I totally bastardise these things, but I put them into sort of terms that
but you
people
speak
can
about
explain.
It so simply.
I put it into sort of layman's terms in a simple way. Say to people, look, that response is actually like inbuilt, hardwired into us as humans. Like, we're not going to get rid of it, but we can control it. It can evolve.
And you need to be able to understand it and then have tools to know how to manage it.
Yeah. And
rather than it being like, you have anxiety, you're riddled with anxiety, I have anxiety.
Exactly.
It's a natural response.
Exactly. Like, if I say to people that...
And would you say that you're more susceptible to have those responses due to like past experiences?
100%. They all come from past experiences. My mum used to say things to me like, my nerves are shot. And I didn't really understand that as a wee guy, but as I'm getting older, I'm like, fuck. My mum was probably having panic attacks.
I've lost my mind.
That's
a typical one.
That's it. Absolutely.
I would say my brain's fried.
You can talk. You could get into a whole sort of conversation, and again, I'm not an expert or educated that deeply on it. Like Gabor Mate, stress in the womb. Like, you know, how stressed out were your parents? Like, they pass these things. You witness them. They show you how to cope. So, you know, my mum. I grew up in and this takes us on to a completely different sort of topic, but poverty is a huge contributor to mental health problems. Is why I'm not a fan of people like Peterson or anybody really like that's pull yourself up with your bootlaces, because not everybody's equipped to do that. So we're just going to forget the millions of people that aren't equipped to do that, and just write them off.
I don't know numbers at all, but I'd say that would be a higher percentage of people that need help.
100%.
Like the people that have no access to help as
100%. But
so it's almost like the way we view society needs to change for them to, not that we can do that. That's one thing you need to like come to terms with as well when you're trying to help people into, is accept that society's a bit fucked, and you'll never
need to accept
or
that.
you would lose your mind.
And if you
would
exactly like you need to accept that, because that is reality. I think that there is also toxic positivity, where you not only accept it, but you get on the train of, we can't change it. You absolutely can change it. We need to come together. This is why the whole individual, it's a load of shit, mate. It is the biggest load of pish. Thatcherism, Ronald Reagan, Reaganomics, the way the world changed to neoliberalism and this sort of individual. You can't, like, oh man, I'm ranting now. See, I know that was a total nervous response. See this stuff?
Because you realise you've just fucking like set yourself off about talking about what the deeper issues are.
Exactly, that I can't change. See this stuff about you are the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. Like, have a bit of trust in your own ability to be an individual. Like, I've got mates who have, even in the last 5 years while I've been a therapist, been really mentally struggling. I will not wipe them away and throw them in the bin or start ignoring them, because I'm like, their negativity is impacting my ability. Like, really? No, like, if I work on myself and I keep myself really in a nice sort of grounded reality, I can help these people. I'm not going to wipe them away. I'm not going to stop spending time with them. I'm an asset to these people. So that's just capitalism. That is just money.
I was trying to think of the word.
That is just like total and utter nonsense to me. Like, we are a pack animal. We rely on community, belonging, and while you're just throwing people away because they don't bring any value, what value does your family? Like,
PTs are so bad.
It's not even just PTs, man. It's no. They're victims of this
pop psychology.
It's the society that we live in. But I accept that that's where we are. Like, I don't sit and think about that. If it comes up in conversation, I have an opinion, and it's like sort of stored away, you know. And I'm a big believer in things like universal basic income, you know, housing, school. Do you know, did we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs when we did therapy? So I love Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think every psychologist has sort of dabbled in it. And see that sort of bottom rung of the ladder, where it's like...
Is it income? Or food?
It's like...
Basic food.
Shelter. Basically the things that we need to survive. Food, shelter, water, healthcare, and then kind of like love and acceptance with the people round about us.
I think about like some of my earliest memories, like my mum and dad arguing, always money, because my mum wouldn't like do any work, and then my dad was constantly having to do like whatever, like 60 hours. And then when I went and lived with my mum, like she was just constantly stressed about money as well. And although she had deeper issues, but that one stress being constant can only make the other issues worse, surely.
Well, it becomes...
we were on benefits, so it's a constant stress.
You're
it's
fighting for survival. Yeah,
you're not. She would basically never have like 500 quid put away ever.
Yeah.
So it's like a constant.
It's
thing.
a constant
it's
worry.
Away.
I've got another good sort of like related thing with a client, where a guy came to me and he was a drug dealer. And, you know, he was...
See, are you allowed to talk about clients if you just don't...
I'm not mentioning names.
But if you just speak very vaguely.
I can tell you about... Because I can tell you about people and sort of like...
Because I do that.
Somebody came to me that was
Jen,
like this.
Jen was asking me about that. She's like, do you speak about clients? And I'm like, yeah, but I don't... I just say, like, this scenario happened with a client.
Absolutely. You're free to open. We'll do case studies, and you'll take things to, you know, like...
How do I help people
and,
if I don't talk about, like... an experience I've had by a client where I helped them?
But I had a guy that came to me and he was a drug dealer, And, you know, like 5 hours later, I was basically saying to him, like, you need to change your profession, mate. Like, your life is in danger. You're hanging about with some big, bad people who have murdered people. Like, your central nervous system's, like, right in the pocket, mate.
And it's working.
Sending you signals.
It's working.
And you're wanting to get rid of these signals to maintain a dysfunctional lifestyle. So that was, like, the end of it. I was like, you know what you need to do, mate? Or accept the state that you're in. That's it. Like, I can't help you. I think it would be unethical to get somebody who's putting their life in danger through their profession and teaching them how to turn
manage their anxiety
without the reality. Without the reality. And that's the same when people are in poverty. Like, when people are living in any sort of scarcity, real scarcity. Now, to bring it back to how we ended up talking about that, when you were saying, like, does anxiety come from, like, past experiences? 100%. I had the exact same experience for you. I've used one before when I talk about this. Me and my sister, I feel sometimes, I don't know if my sister's ever watched a podcast that I've ever done, but this is her story as well, and I don't know how the outcomes have been for her, but I can only talk about myself. That I can remember one Saturday night, me and my sister were basically put in the room with, like, a wee Farm Foods frozen pizza. They used to come in, like, a bread bag, and they were, like, you know, maybe like 5 inches, like, cheese and tomato pizza. Real horrific, like, foods, like, no protein, like, probably no even real cheese or tomato in it, you know what I mean? And, like, bad, right? But that was it. They were cheap, right? And my mum and dad were screaming at each other because they couldn't have dinner. So me and my sister got the last of the food. And me and my sister, like, I'm about 7. Me and my sister, like, hugged each other and, like, were crying because you're like, what the fuck is going on here? Now, fast forward to I'm working in retail and I'm doing sales and I'm making 50 grand a year, and I'm still checking my bank account. I'm still wondering about, like, see if I lose this job, I'm going to end up penniless. I still sit with
that feeling all the time.
Uh-huh.
I've never had enough money in my bank account, and I've not got very far. But even just, like, whatever, the first time I've had, like, 2 grand put away.
Yeah.
Even that, I'm like that. But I also have had a bad relationship where I'll spend it all. I've managed to, like, get a bit of savings and spunk all of it.
But so there's a sort of, like, couple of things that's happening. The thought of being penniless is triggering my fight or flight, because when I was a wee boy, that's what my mum and dad done. That's what I watched them do. They were poor. We lived in a housing scheme. That's what I witnessed. So I have been given that. And then there's a psychological element of it where I need to accept the fact that that's the truth, but also remind myself every day that I'm not poor. Do you know what I mean? And, like, because you could end up in a place, and I see it every day, where you are rich and you're still chasing money, wealth, power. And this is the world's so fucked with this stuff, man.
That's what capitalism contributes to, like, that way of thinking, isn't it?
Oh, that's the whole modality. That it relies on that. It relies on people being poor. It relies on scarcity. Who's going to go and clean a toilet?
See, whenever
but who's going to go and clean a toilet? Who's going to go to a care home and wipe shit off of somebody's arse if all of your basics are taken care of and you don't need to go and do that? Do you know what I mean? And, like, very few people, I think. Or you would have to reward these people to the tune of the labour, right? Like, and stick with me. We're on politics. We'll get off of politics in a second.
I can speak. No, but
somebody who stands in Starbucks, right, and gets screamed at by somebody because they didn't make the coffee right, you'd need to pay me a fucking lot of money to go and do that job. If all of my basics were taken care of, you would have to be paying me 20 quid an hour. Like, it would be a high paying job. Like, being somebody that takes abuse, like how much abuse the train ticket conductors get. How much would you need to pay somebody to go and put parking tickets on a car if you
one
had
of my mates
a house?
One of my mates done that for one day, and I took a picture of him.
If you had a house,
ever
if you had all of your basics taken care of, they don't need to give it to you. They can give you money, right? And this is universal basic income, which is, I think, coming. I think it's an inevitability. They give you money. You don't need to go and do that anymore. How many people are actually going to do it unless they're rewarded like adequately? And I think that I had a conversation with a friend during the pandemic where I was like, this could be a real pivot point for society where we actually start to look at people that work in the service industry and realise the value of a nurse, of somebody that works in Tesco. But we just went straight back into the same madness that we've been going down for a couple of 100 years. And it relies on people being poor and people being impoverished. I'm open to the fact that it could work without it, but I don't see how, because how do we get people to do these shitty jobs if we don't have
But
them
it's the same.
chasing a carrot at the end of a stick, and the stick is like what me and you have experienced, this idea that if we lose our job, we'll lose our home, we'll lose our partner, we'll lose everything. It's like the worst thing that could happen to us.
I know you said you want to get off politics, but I've been ignorant to politics probably from my early 20s, and only till my late 20s I've realised, right, everything I talk about and everything I want to help.
Has a political arm or whatever? Or?
There's the politics is the reason that I'm in the job. Like, it's almost creating the problem. It's like the more and more you look into obesity, like, it's not a wild statement to say that obesity's been on the rise since like 60s, 70s and 80s when ultra processed foods came in, right? And there's so many different people talking about obesity. Like, I've been slagging off Diarrhea CEO because it's horrendous, right? But that is one thing that you can probably go without going, let's look at the studies, right? 70s is when like ultra processed food really came into things, and that's when obesity started rising, right? But then you look into it and go, right, why are people on lower incomes more susceptible to gaining weight and being obese? And then you look, the ultra processed foods or the cheaper foods, and it's a lot to do with the income that people have. Because then I look back to my childhood, what kind of foods was I eating when I was gaining loads and loads of weight, and I go, okay, we had no money, so my mum literally just like would make like, those pasta and sauce packets and super noodles and stuff. We're on. Like, that's
I'm checking everything's still recording.
That's what we would eat. Frozen pizzas, like you were talking about.
How much protein, like how much veg, like how much nutrients are in that. But this is the thing.
Stuff.
Like, see, I'm right there with you. Why does McDonald's not use grass-fed 100% like beef?
Money.
Why does it not use good quality cheese? Why is the bread packed full of water and sugar? Money. Profit margins. Let me just put this before people are like fucking socialist or I'm a political nomad. I don't believe in any political system. I think anybody that's dogmatic, like this is the only way that we can do it, it's basically a fucking simpleton really in their mind. Like, it's a simple way of thinking that causes absolutely no critical thought, and they just go, well, you know what I mean? Like, by that, like,
any black and white statements like that don't really help anyone.
It'll be a mix. I think we're going to end up going down a road, we can get back to the therapy, but where it needs to be a balance. Now, this comes back to the therapy. Everything in life needs to be balanced. You're spinning so many plates, you need to balance them. Like, if you can go all in on a business for a certain period of time, but the other things in your life will suffer. It's a fact. Steve Jobs is a great example of that. That guy, he's lauded. Musk, is there a bigger dickhead on the planet? But these people are like lauded. Like Jeff Bezos, right? That guy these people could go like that and poverty would be gone. Instead, they're building spaceships that governments did in the 60s and did better and went to the moon. And they've not even done that, right? Put a man on it. So they are like, they are sort of like hacking their brain, like to think that they're achieving these amazing and great and wonderful things, but actually really they're not really doing much. Like society, look at guys like Carnegie. Like, that guy invested, he wasn't a great guy, right? But he built things within his local community that fed the local community. Libraries, concert halls, culture, art. What is Jeff Bezos? What has Elon Musk contributed to the culture that we currently live within?
I feel like I should substitute in my dad right now for this.
But other than to disrupt it through buying Twitter and basically just opening it up, and people can have their opinion on that. My opinion is that I've took a step back because it's just full of porn ads, and it's went the wrong way for me. But there's nothing wrong with making money. There's nothing wrong with being rich. There's nothing wrong with having that skill set. But by the way, they were all rich already, like the chances of you going for a Glasgow housing scheme and becoming a billionaire is zero, actually. Like, nobody's done it, or like one person's done it. So you're a statistical anomaly. But all of these people started for privilege. I don't think there's any of them. We could go through them like a laundry list. You could become a millionaire, but I don't know if you'll become a billionaire. But see, once you get to that, give back. Like, think about like the addiction community and the 12 steps. I think that there's a lot of talk about addiction, and there can be a lot of chat about the causes and all. I think that there's a lot to be said about a lack of community and a lack of people that just feel like they're just a single person in this world, and they don't have a sense of identity. When they go into the 12 steps, one of the big steps is you now need to mentor somebody else. You now need to give back to your community, the addiction community. If you're Jeff Bezos... and
that's why they're always so, like, if someone misses a meeting, they're always, like, reaching out to the
exactly. If Jeff Bezos is profiting from Amazon, which is a sort of, like, now communal...
I feel like it runs the world.
Communal shopping thing, I think he should be giving back to the world. I don't think he should be boosting his own ego by putting a cowboy hat and jumping into a fucking spaceship and we're going to colonise Mars. I don't think we are. Like, I genuinely don't think we are. And I think that people will probably listen to this and be like, oh, he's just a fucking social justice warrior. But I've got nothing against people wanting to make money. I've made a fair amount of money, like an average, maybe above average amount of money for where I came from in my time. I'm definitely middle class. But it's why I do cheap therapy. It's why I want to give back. I've got a skill set that I can now give back to people. I don't rip people off. I try and do it at a rate where I can survive and they can get access to something on a very, reasonable amount of money. And that's the way that I want to give back. But to go back to that sort of capitalist, individualised, like we are, just focus on the individual, don't worry about the collective. I think we're failing. I think we're failing drastically.
Can we go till 10 too?
Yes, we absolutely can.
There's two things I really want.
We can go right up until 1 o'clock. You can leave when I'm...
Because there's loads of good stuff in that, and because I wonder how we can tie this in, because there is links to... So, again, I don't want to be controversial about SSRIs. I can't even say it. SSRIs, right? I don't want to be controversial about them. I know there's people that it's like saved their life, and maybe they don't have access to a therapist. They've went on something when they're in a really dark place and it might have saved their life. So you're good for going through things and not saying things black and white anyway. But I just want to caveat it with that. I'm not trying to like bash something, and I don't want to do that with this podcast anyway. I have quite a lot of bad experiences with clients going to the NHS. A lot. It's happening more and more. It's actually probably like become this year maybe one of the biggest pains in my life with anything physio, mental health. And I've maybe had like 5 clients that have went to, so often clients that work within the NHS, going to see someone like a GP in the NHS, and they prescribe them with something for like anxiety or depression due to the circumstances. With like, they go, what's the cause? Oh, like I'm in the NHS, stressed out my nut. Person who works within the NHS gives them a pill without anything, like without any like sort of other solution, and then you go back into that horrendous working environment.
Oh mate,
it's all like within the one system. And I don't want, every time I talk about the NHS a lot, right, I don't ever talk about the people who work within the system. The people aren't broken.
No.
It's more I'm bringing up the system and what it does to the people rather than the other way around. I want to make that so clear.
I agree with you 100%. Like my mum got took into hospital just before Christmas, and there was a 24-hour period where they were telling us it was potential heart failure, and it turned out to be whatever, this weird flu It's going about my mum's like 75-year-old, do you know what I mean? And she smoked 60 fags a day, as I said earlier on. She's lived an ultra stressful life. She got put in care for a year when she was young because my granddad wasn't well. She grew up from a descendant of the survivor of the potato famine. Like, these generational traumas have all been passed down. They kind of, like, you know, they stopped with me. Like, I was able, and I'm grateful for this. This is the other thing that I hate, when people are like, you know, I did this. It's about me, and I got up and I did that.
There's a lot of luck.
Oh, mate, it's all luck. It's all luck. I just happened to get to a financial place where I could go and see a private therapist, and also, like, love sort of certain circumstances, love reading, love sitting, and, you know, like, there's just it's circumstance that dictates all of these things. My mum did not have access. My mum was born in 45. She did not have access to this stuff, right? You know, CBT became popular in the 60s and 70s and stuff like that. So therapeutic modalities weren't even there. I don't even know if they would have even knew what the word mental health meant. But the people my mum was in hospital, and I just kept looking around and just feeling really fucking bad for the people that were there. The NHS has been absolutely driven into the ground, and they're doing it on a model to privatise it. They are making it so bad that the masses then call for private businesses like Virgin Health, owned by a billionaire, to come in, and then eventually we'll end up like America, where people who don't have a job or are on a low income and happen to get cancer can't afford the treatment and ultimately die, or need to find a way to get to Canada to get free treatment. That's insane to me, mate. That is insanity. Anybody that calls for the American model on health is a fucking idiot. and that isn't controversial to me. Anybody that looks at that and just looks at the money that's being made, but if you're rich, you can get the best healthcare on the planet.
But most people
aren't rich. Like, so if you're rich, you can go on a private jet. You know what I mean? But most people are driving about in a clapped out Fiat Panda. Like, so.
I thought you were going to say Ford Fiesta there.
Is that what you've got? But
06 plate, thank you very much.
They do have the best healthcare on the planet, but it's got a huge barrier to it. And I believe that the best healthcare on the planet should be available to everybody at source for free, right? So the NHS, the people that work within the system, you're spot on. It's not their fault.
Some of the smartest people in the world.
Exactly, mate. And a lot of people get so sick, a lot of GPs get so sick of having 10-minute appointments, and we're getting to the root of why they just write a prescription for a pill.
Because they've no other solution.
They don't have time. And if they say to the person, I believe that you need therapy, but there's a 9-month waiting list, well, what if that person goes out and takes their own life in that 9 months? They are going to feel responsible. Everybody gets into being a doctor, I think, because they want to help people. I think it's one of the... Maybe they want to be rich. Maybe if you they're not. They're so not. I don't think they are.
If as a doctor,
right?
We're not going to be rich.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, unless you move to America and you.
No, for the NHS, we're not.
Yeah, you're not going to, right? So if you end up like a GP in the NHS, you're trying to help people. Like you're trying to. That's your motivation. Onto the SSRIs. My professional message to people that come to me that are on them is, I ask them, how's it working for you? And some people do go, look, see, when I try and come off them, I can't cope, stay on them. Like you said, they save lives. They're a short-term solution to a long-term problem, though. They numb people out. They're a receptor inhibitor. So like there's this common misconception.
Why you need to be so careful when you speak about it, because that's why these people on podcasts or whatever, that's why I tried to say so much that it's not, and I wouldn't clip this and make you say something controversial because there's too individual circumstances.
So they reversed engineered SSRIs. They noticed that when they gave animals, I think the first one was Valium.
Was it Prozac?
Prozac, right? Which
I'm reading that book, the Body Keeps the Score.
Yes,
that's great. By the way.
So they reverse engineered it. They gave this drug, and they noticed that in rats it meant more serotonin in the brain, and so they were like, right, therefore depression is caused by a lack of serotonin in the brain, but there isn't a lack. You have the serotonin in your brain, but what happens is through trauma or whatever is that the receptor sort of doesn't take it in, so they need to open up the receptor or close the receptor off, like either way.
So
and
they
that's
almost got the wrong causation of it, or the wrong.
They did
solution.
1 + 1 and got to 3.
Aye.
They got close, and they do have an effect.
It does get you to that. It does bring your serotonin levels up, doesn't it?
It opens the receptor,
Okay.
or it shuts off a receptor so that more goes to another receptor. I'm not a neuroscientist, right?
I'm the same. I'm trying to like say this without fucking
through
it all up.
podcasts or whatever. Now, anti-anxiety meds, there is no proof that they work. Zero. They've never and I've never met a person that that really works for me. So there's a difference between antidepressants and anti-anxiety. So the anti-anxiety stuff, again, my professional sort of approach would be, is it working for you? Does it help you? And if the answer is yes, then it's yes, and I respect the person's experience. My personal opinion is I wouldn't go anywhere near them. I wouldn't touch them with a barge pole, because there are people that have actual mental disorders, schizophrenia. They need they need antipsychotics. Like, that will save their life, but that's not the same as an antidepressant. So there are people out there that have like mental health, not a mental health problem, but mental illness, and they need meds, and it will save their life. And the adverse impact of the drug itself for that person, in my experience, tends to need to be lived with. But for people with,
as in what the antipsychotic medication does to them, like as the side effects.
Have you ever seen the ad that's like causes suicidal thoughts, may cause death, causes causes cancers,
but it's a necessary evil.
But for a small proportion of the population, I think they reckon somewhere between 6 and 11% of the population.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, but for the amount of people that experience depression in life, it's not a lot. It's a single point, but we over. So that's my opinion, is we overprescribe them. It's done through a place of necessity within the system, and we're talking about the UK. We're not talking about America. They have the therapeutic model, but they still fire out pharmaceuticals like their sweeties to people.
So it doesn't work the same in the UK, does it? Who in the UK, who's profiting from the
NHS pays mega bucks for these drugs. Like, if you
is that within the UK though?
Yeah, within the NHS. So then I think I've seen something, and this could be completely wrong, but one paracetamol tablet costs the NHS £9, and you can go and buy 12 for 50p in Boots. Right. But that's because there's a system, and there's, do you know what I'm saying? Like, there is a system in place. And it's the same system that's they pay. I think in the American system they pay mega. It's like 500% more than any other health system in the world for the drugs that they're prescribing to people. So the system's fucked, man. It's rotten to the core. Like, it really is rotten at its core. But so let's get back to the sort of antidepressant and stuff. Like, you can, I think, like, if somebody, you can short term. Here's what I would say to a friend. See, if a friend came to me and went, I went to the GP, I'm struggling, they've gave me whatever antidepressant, I would say to them, please take that. Do you think that you need it, like you want it, take it, go to therapy as well. The most effective way to do it is combining both, then removing the drugs, and then you can go on with your life. But they're overprescribed. They're prescribed to people that need talk therapy. They're prescribed to people that need lifestyle changes, and a GP doesn't know how to handle that. So they've got 10 minutes.
It's not even they don't know. There's no possible way for them in 10 minutes.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's no, they've nothing to be able to do it.
And I don't think a GP could say,
plus a GP isn't
here's go and get private therapy. Like, I don't think I've never heard anybody going to their GP with a problem and them going, here's a link to the BACPP or whatever governing body's website where they'll have a directory of therapists and you can go and search for that. They'll put them on a waiting list for an NHS therapist and they'll give them a prescription for a drug.
I've had a few clients that have stopped paying me, like an agreement to go use that money for therapy.
Uh-huh.
Because they've told me like the GP is going to prescribe them stuff, and I go, why? And I'll ask them why, because I get so scared for people, that I go, why is it you feel you need anxiety medication? They go, this or this happened, or like, I'm stressed out about this, and I was like, do you speak to your GP about that? And they're like, no, like 10 minutes. I'm like, right, do you want to maybe, can you afford private therapy just now? And they're like, maybe like, nah. I'm like, do you want to stop paying me and use
Go and
that
try
money?
that,
Because they pay me like 160 quid a month.
I mean, I really respect you for that, man. I really, like, that's
it's only happened like twice, but it's like,
I mean, you've still done it. You've literally went, take the money that you're going to pay me for the next 8 to 12 weeks and go and find yourself a private therapist.
I've had so many bad experiences with like even people eventually getting therapy with NHS, and it's
this was the next thing I was going to say.
It's like a 4-week fucking like
45 minutes.
I seen one of my friends coming on Instagram talking about his experience with therapy, and it's just like what he was talking about was just completely different to what I'd done with you, and I think it maybe helped him like at that point. Mate, but I'm like, fuck, you need way more than what you've just said you done.
My experience with private therapy was, I had a couple of really horrific experiences with private therapists. Like, I had a guy telling me that addiction doesn't exist, it's all in the mind, and it's like, you may as well be a fucking magician.
Oh my god.
Like, and it turned out that he was like a hypnotherapist, you know what I mean? And mate, when I walked into that meeting room, there was a Rangers player, there was a Celtic player. This is like a high end 150 quid an hour like mental health professional that was sitting in front of me telling me that addiction doesn't exist. And I basically just laughed at him and left, you know. Like, but with NHS experience, what I've tend to found with people was they get 4 sessions at 45 minutes on a Zoom call with somebody who is probably doing a 12-hour day. So they're seeing 12 clients, maybe hopefully 10. They've got no time to take in your story. They've got no time. So they go straight into what I would do at the back end with somebody after I've done a whole bunch of connection.
You're like, when I remember you doing it with me, like maybe the first 4 sessions, you're just trying to like get an overall picture.
I'm building the person in front of me in my mind. I'm building that complex jigsaw puzzle of who they are and how they feel the way that they feel and how they act the way that they act.
And you don't even really need to like do a session for that. You just kind of speak, don't you? And you'll maybe like, it'll come up naturally in your head, I'd imagine. You go, all right, he's never told me about like his mum or his dad, and then ask about that, and then you've got that wee bit, and then
bit of Freud. Like, I have problems with my girlfriends. What's your relationship like with your mother? But it's true. It's like it's a stereotype because it's true. You know?
But you just done it as a flowing conversation, so it's like natural. Like, we're building it. We already had a relationship a wee bit before it. Like,
we had rapport.
But you were it was just normal conversations.
Yeah,
but you would need to do that because also, like we were speaking about at the start, it's like, how do good therapists actually like help their clients the most, because they are relatable, and all of that builds into the same thing, isn't it? You're just having normal conversations, but you're building an idea of what you're going to do in the future. Whereas 4 sessions,
45 minutes.
So
a thought journal.
So 3 hours. How are you meant to do anything with someone in 3 hours?
Especially when somebody's at such like, so for example, you weren't in such a dark place that you were having to go and speak to a GP. You know, you were having that sort of thought bounce about your head. Maybe I could go to therapy and maybe that could improve my life, and having that. There's a difference between that and people that are having such a dark experience that they're like, they're so desperate.
In poverty, maybe unemployed, maybe suicidal. They don't have the access that I had to go in private.
No, absolutely no way. And I don't know if you want to touch on sort of male suicide and some of the misconceptions of...
You can touch on it. I'm so uneducated.
I'm sick of hearing about it, because women try and take their life just as much as men. It's just that we are way more brutal about it, and we complete. You know, like we are way more susceptible to violence. We are way more susceptible to actually like getting into a process of like, how do I do this? But female suicide attempts are in line, if not at times, being just below or just above the men. So why are we not looking at that? Why are we not looking at the people that are trying to do it? What are we thinking? That's just a cry for help. Aye, sure. Like, downing a fucking box of Cocodamol is a cry for help. You fucking idiot. Like, anybody that goes that far to make an attempt is trying to do it. There might be a small amount of people that do it for attention. I would never ever say that to anybody that came to me and said I made an attempt. It was just a bad attempt. That I'd be like in my head going like, that must have been horrific, because honestly, the courage that it takes to go to that end of ends, it's a solution to a problem. It's no, see this like weakness, like anybody that says that suicide is weak, I'd be like, have you ever tried to kill yourself? Like, I've thought about it. I would never have the bottle to go and actually, like, it scares the life out of me. It actually scares the life out of me. So anybody that goes and does it, it's not like, it's no weakness. It's like, and people might be like, that's a horrific thing to say about suicide, but no, like, honest, that's the way that I see it. And we get so, like, when it comes into like suicidal thoughts, and like one of the big things that ends up happening a lot when I've dealt with people that are suicidal is I'll always say to them, like, what prediction are you making in your mind? Like, you're having these thoughts, you're having these like really dark thoughts about ending your life. What do you think's going to happen if you don't do something about it? And they always say the one thing, they always go, I'm going to end up doing it. And I will end up challenging that and saying, how does it make you feel when you think about killing yourself? It makes me feel horrible. Do you know what I mean? And like, it makes me feel like panicky inside. And it's like, so if that's the right thing to do and you feel like that's what you should do, why does it trigger your fight or flight? Why does your life-saving mechanism click on when you're thinking about doing these things? Do you know what I mean? And like,
why is your body telling you not
why
to
is your
do it?
body, that signal in your body's telling you not to do it? I know it's uncomfortable, and I know it's probably the feeling in your body that's actually maybe driving you to feel like that or think like that or whatever, like, but I like the way that just that whole thing about male suicide, and you know, men take their life to, like, I think it's like for every one woman there's 3 men, but I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, can we look at how many people total are trying to do that, and then we can start to look at, I think it's a more common experience than what we think. And also, women are way more likely to open up to their peers and talk to their peers. Women are way more likely to go and get therapy. Women are way more likely to put their hand up and go, I need help. And a lot of men that I know are like, you know, just go on with it. Fucking pussy, like, what? You know what I mean? And it makes them feel so uncomfortable in their own skin that they actually berate or belittle people that are like that, you know? Very common, very big podcaster in Scotland did a tweet a few years ago about that, like, about it being a weakness.
I know who you're talking about.
It makes you so uncomfortable in your own skin that you need to attack people that do something. I would have bet that he's probably experienced that, and maybe even it sits in his shadow and he hates that part of him and sees that as a weakness, you know what I mean? And that's part of that's a big part of the reason why we are here. Men don't want to open up. Men don't feel comfortable sitting with their mate and going, I don't feel good, mate. Like, or men don't want to reach out and come and sit down with a guy with a beard, and you know what I mean, and then sit and go, here's what's going on inside of me. Is there any way that you can help me with this? We lock it up. We hope that it goes away. We push it to the back of your mind, and we hope that it just doesn't come back to haunt us. But your brain, this is the thing, like, your brain will throw it up to you because it wants you to deal with it. It will keep coming back. Intrusive thoughts will keep coming back because it's like, this is a problem that we need to deal with. It's no, you know, like an inevitable end that's going to come for you.
So, two things that I want to try tie it back, because there's 2 things I want to ask you about. I want to ask about that, the problem with the NHS and the overprescription of SSRIs, and how you think that we can maybe change things with that, or if we can even, because you're talking at an individual level, and then this is a society problem, and not losing your mind by trying to go down that rabbit hole.
I've got an answer to that straight away.
But the other thing I was wanting to talk about as well, so I'll maybe just throw these 2 questions at you and just let you ramble anyway. Okay. But for me, it's not really a question, but my experience was like, so every time I went near a woman that I liked, I would have like a fight or flight response whenever, like, say it was like you're asking them out the second time or whatever, and I'm waiting on them replying. That's when I would go into like fight or flight. And
You're also excited though.
Yeah,
because there's two possibilities. I think for you there was multiple possibilities. There was the fear of love, really, like with it. I don't know, like love phobia. I don't know if that if there is a phobia of love, but there definitely is a phobia of vulnerability and being vulnerable.
But what I would say is I would YouTube, like maybe like I would watch different people talking about dating, and there would be psychologists and stuff, and there would be people maybe even saying the exact same things as you, right? Genuinely, the exact same advice. But I found no matter how much I would maybe do different things or like try think about it differently, my response, the response I would get, where I would just start overthinking. Because see, if it was like you're saying, I'm excited, right? But say the message came through or they ignored me, or they were like, I don't want to see you, or whatever, and then I'm anxious for like 2 or 3 days, right? And I would say my response to that was more intense than it should be.
Well, then your body's misfiring.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is, when I was watching YouTube videos and podcasts and learning about all of that, it didn't do shit for me.
Because
I couldn't.
Theoretical.
That's why I came to you, because I was like, I know I have this problem, but I can't fix it.
This is a problem with pop psychology and YouTube psychology.
That's basically what I wanted to get you on to.
Maybe even a problem of bibliotherapy, which is really powerful. And when we were doing therapy, I would always be like, go and do your research. So that's a big part of what you're going to do.
I was quite careful when I was doing the research that I would follow people that were maybe saying similar things to you.
Yeah, so being sort of more balanced rather than dogmatic.
Rather than just typing in podcast
black
on
and
this.
white. I mean, like there's people out there, mate. Look at Andrew Tate and look at this part of the internet where a lot of guys that maybe struggling with dating will go doing a sort of thing of like, the reason that I feel uncomfortable is because women only want me for my money, and or like that sort of pish, like what you're like.
I never
we're
really
about for love, we're about for love, but we like anger and resentment and stuff like that feels good. Like you feel justified in it and gives you excuses not to work on yourself if it's all women's fault,
I never really fell into that trap. I just
you're guided, like, and you didn't fall into that trap. You're probably like quite a compassionate person. The way that they speak maybe just sort of turns you off. Listen to the way that guy's fucking speaking. That doesn't do much.
See,
for
as soon as someone uses a derogatory term about women, I always just switch off.
Like, why did it not? Because it was theoretical only. There was no practical application within that. There was no time within that hour-long podcast to go right, but trauma's stored in your body. So what we're going to do, alongside exposing yourself to these situations through going on dates, getting to a third date and seeing where that goes, being open-minded, stop trying to control the outcome. I need to fall in love and I need to be with the person forever and blah, blah, blah. It's not a Disney movie. Be open-minded and expose yourself to these things that you fear. That's one. There's another element, what's going through your head, what you're telling yourself. There's another element, it's really complicated, really, like what in your past is informing this situation. What are the relationships like with other women in your past? Let's talk about that. And then there is this, let's get control of your, like, do you feel like this is life or death? No. So your body's misfiring. The signal for your brain and that's sending to your body is that this is life or death to you, right? That's probably informed by your past. That's probably, blah, blah, blah. But what we're going to do is we're going to get control of that. And how do you do that? You do that through mindfulness, meditation, being able to breathe. Like, your breath is your fuel, really. If you get a message back for somebody, and I've done this, mate, like, I've other situations in life, say for instance, like somebody messages me, right, and it's like, I'm a podcast producer, I've got a podcast studio. I've watched that podcast, it wasn't good enough. I can tell you that if I'm getting into a fight or flight response, I will come out of it and I'll look and I'll be like, what's going on in my body? And I'll be like, shallow breathing, my head will be, and it's like, right, put the phone down. Your body's responding to this like it's a fucking train coming to knock you down and kill you, or like whatever, a life threat. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to sit, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to say to myself, I'm safe. I don't need to be like this. It doesn't need to be like this. And then once I have calmed down my body and I've calmed down my thinking, I'll go back to the message. I'll maybe ask the guy, what was it specifically that wasn't good enough? Like, there's a tendency within humans to fight back.
And he might say something that you go, oh, I couldn't even have controlled that.
But it's fight or flight, right? So people go into either they won't message the person back and they'll ignore them and fuck him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But then you're in fight and you maybe message him like, you don't know what you're talking about and blah, blah, blah. But see if you can just calm yourself down, control yourself. You can go and ask the question, what specifically, or listen, I would say...
Or he goes, I'm having a bad day.
I would respond to that by going like, after I've calmed myself down, I'm a therapist and blah, 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 I still need to do all these practices. I will sit with my emotions, I'll let them pass. I won't fight them. I won't be like, who does he fucking think? He doesn't know what he... But, nah, like, just sit, calm yourself down. I'm safe, I'm okay. And then I would maybe go in and go, oh, listen, mate, I don't want a disgruntled customer, so I'm taking this very seriously. What was it about the podcast that you didn't like? Oh, well, at 50 minutes, like... Oh, right, okay, let me go and see if I can fix that for you, and if I can fix it, I'll fix it, and if I can't, I'll accept that, and I'll message and go, I can't fix that. I had a guy the day that was like, can you go, see at this bit here, can you go back and do A, B and C? And I just messaged them back saying, no, I can't do that, mate, sorry. I live cut it in the studio. It is what it is.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? What am I going to do about that? Now, what I would have done previously is I would have rattled with that. That would have rattled me. I'd have been like, I'm not good enough. Oh, it needs to be better. How do I fix it?
I should have done it differently.
I should have, blah, 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 blah. It's like, just calm yourself down. It's all right. You're not going to die. Chill out. You maybe lose a client, but if you find out what it is that you didn't like, you can maybe progress and change.
Or you can let it go because it wasn't something you can't
control. Or if it's something that you can't control, then you just let it go, man. I
think that sort of way of thinking, Pat, like when I took that in every part of my life, I came to you for like that specific response with
here's
women.
The beautiful thing that...
I started thinking about it with everything. Like
here's
money,
the beautiful thing about therapy, right? Once you learn the techniques and then once you learn the way of thinking, it will permeate all your life. So it does that in reverse as well. You can't just have anxiety about work and not have anxiety about your relationship, about money. Like, it permeates your full fucking life because it's a thought pattern, it's a way of thinking. And if you change that way of thinking, now there's caveats to that. The change must be 100% true. Like, this is where toxic positivity comes into it. I remember
positive affirmations.
Well, you can have that works, but you can also delude yourself. You can also revert to narcissistic thinking.
You would need to believe them.
I remember watching a TikTok. You remember the Dr. Michael stuff on TikTok with the tanning people? No. So I watched a TikTok. So these people were basically selling melatonin gummy bears, which is illegal in this country without a prescription, and tanning pills and tanning creams to people, saying that, and also in the background, bleach tablets to people with autism. But that was secretly they were doing that. They weren't doing that publicly. That all came out in the wash. People dug into them on TikTok and blah, blah, blah. I sat and watched that. I went on their TikTok because I did a podcast called Straight White Whale with Darren Connell. He's a comedian. He's hilariously funny. I'm not, right? But he carries it. But we did a podcast on these people, and I went a wee dig on TikTok, and it showed you them sitting, and they were like, here's what we do in the morning, troops, right? Sitting with the phone, holding each other's hands like, we are powerful, we are intelligent, I am an abundance mindset, and it's all bullshit. It's like pish for idiots. They are deluding themselves, but that's the power of your thinking. You can delude yourself, so you need to be very careful. That's why it's important that you get taught boundaries and you get taught ethics, and you don't just go out there and fire these techniques at people, because affirmations fucking work. But for you, or I'll give you a non-personalised example of this. For somebody that wakes up every day and feels like I am unlovable because my parents didn't love me when I was growing up, that was an experience that I had. There's like a universal principle that you deserve to be loved. Like, when we're born and you're a child, that child deserves love, affection and safety. And also, like, I think we all deserve like a role model that can role model to you how to be in life, how to deal with upsetting events. You're not going to get away from these things. They are what they are, right? Like, you can't sidestep grief. You'll lose somebody that you love. You'll probably go through a breakup. You will lose a job. you'll probably experience definitely where I came from, people will probably experience a period of life where they don't have a lot of money, or they struggle, or they need to rein in their lifestyle to accommodate having to go to a lesser job with lesser money because of life circumstances. But having that role model that can teach you, here's how you deal with that. Because you can't. I think this is the big misconception with life, is that you can just you don't need to feel like that. You kind of do. Like you're a human being. If your mum dies, you're going to feel like. Do you want to sit there and be like, it's fine? Life. See, have you ever seen that meme with the cartoon sitting in the house on fire, going, "This is fine"? That's what toxic positivity will lead you. You'll be sitting in a life that's fucked, and you'll be like. You'll be waking up, you'll be telling yourself that everything's fine when it's actually not. So when you change, when you help people change and you facilitate people changing the way that they think, it must be 100% true. You need to move. The lie actually is what they're telling themselves. I'm unlovable. I can't do that. You ever?
So you need to show them. You need to basically show them.
You can prove to them through experiments, like behavioural experiments.
Well, the thing you done with me, we've got 5 minutes.
5 minutes, mate.
Right.
Sorry. I can be 5 minutes late for my meeting as well.
So the thing you done with me, where you got me to basically, realistically, if you go into like really vague terms, right, I had trust issues probably stemmed mostly from my mum, my upbringing with my mum. But you sat and argued with me, and you pretended that you were me. And I found that hilarious. But then you were arguing back with me. And it was like, how can I trust like women again if I don't trust my mum? And I said back to myself, but I trust my dad like more than anyone in the world. And it like literally just changed the way I thought about everything. I was like, yeah, but I trust my dad. Yeah. I was like, so why can I not trust other people?
Yeah.
And that, honestly, that was one of if I remember one thing, that was the biggest one, because it literally was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. It was like a whole realisation that I was holding myself back from something I'd learned from my mum, but I had a great another parent that was, he has his quirks, he's fucking also mental.
Yeah.
But he would have done anything for me. So like that.
I loved you.
Aye.
Like he genuinely loved you.
Questionable love sometimes, but love.
But that's what I always come back to when I talk about my own dad. Like he had a horrific upbringing. You know.
Well, my dad's got loads of quirks from growing up with two alcoholic parents and stuff.
My mum and dad undoubtedly loved me. They just got it wrong. I don't blame them for that. They tried to do the best by me. But this we can wrap up on this, right? One of the big things that I talk to people about, a lot of people come when they come into sessions and you're first engaging with them. I'll ask them about, do you believe that your emotions can change like in a second? Like, can you go from feeling sad 1 second to happy the next? And usually people will be like, nah. Because when they're coming to you as a therapist, they're stuck in a negative emotion. I do air quotes a lot, right? But negative emotion, say like depression, sadness, maybe nihilism, life's pointless or, meaningless or whatever like that. And they're stuck in that. So they wake up every day and they just experience like negativity. And I'll say to them, do you believe that you can change that in an instant? And they'll be like, no. And I'll say to them, well, tell me this, right? Have you ever been given a gift, and the second that you rip that gift open, you're like, oh my God, I never even knew I needed that. That's the perfect gift for me. Your emotion changed from 1 minute to the next. Why did it change? And they'll tell you can go into a lot of discovery. Well, somebody's got you. They've got you something that you didn't even know. They know you better than you know yourself, or whatever you want to go into. Somebody's shown me love. They appreciate me. They've listened to me. There's a whole load of things that can happen when you rip that gift wrap, right? To reveal your gift. For the second before that to the second after that, your emotions have completely changed. You can do that with anything in your life, as long as it's a lie, right? So if somebody's coming to me and going, and I'll say to you, what's wrong? What's the thought that goes through your head? I'm poor. Are you poor? Can we accept that? I don't want to change that. Now, we could go into, like, use techniques to lie to the person to get them out of this idea and blah, blah, blah. But if they are, like, financially poor and that's the thing that's tormenting them, I've got no money. That's the truth. All you really need to do is be like, mate, I've been there and I know how that feels. And relate to them and let them feel heard. Do you know what I mean?
So you wouldn't give any advice on, like, not advice, but like, would you talk about like what do you do for work?
So now we get into a different conversation, because you could be like, go and get a new job. I can't do that. Now you've got a limiting belief that we can work on. We can work on that.
I'm not capable of making more money.
Yeah, but if you're looking at your bank account, you're negative $2,000 and you've got no money coming in for the next 3 weeks, and you're like, I've got no money. Hey, you've got no money. But if you're saying to them, is the solution a new career, a new lifestyle change, a new path? I could never do that. I'm not smart enough. Now we've got the lie. Now we can challenge that. Write that down. Let's look at that. Let's get a microscope under that. And then just get the person, go and research how somebody would find a new job and a new career. You know what I mean? And I'll like go and find fucking, and they'll come back and they'll be like, I found like 4 jobs that pay more money and blah blah blah. So you do the behavioural. That's why it's cognitive behavioural therapy. You deal with the thoughts. You get them to challenge their beliefs through life experiences and behaviours, and it kind of like comes. And then what you said earlier was so powerful, mate. That then permeates other aspects of your life. You can just focus on one thing and do one thing with a person in therapy, 10 to 20 sessions, and that'll impact everything that person does. It's actually beautiful to watch sometimes. Sometimes you see people just going into, this cunt doesn't know what he's talking about. What a load of shite. Meditation, breath work can change my thoughts by writing it down and challenging. Fuck off. And it's like, but that is a problem. Actually, that's a problem. See, once you, and I say to people, once you're ready, chat the door. And I'm here for you, mate. Always, you know.
Cool. I think we'll end it there.
Mate, I'm worried about some of the shit that's.
You did. Well, to be fair, I went like, let's not be controversial about that. Fucking capitalism.
Aye, but that's like, that isn't how I live my life, you know. Like, I'm no like, I'm not super gluing myself to the ground, and you know, I'm not anti-capitalist. I just think that the world that we live in right now, which runs purely on, you know, money and profit, doesn't work for the vast majority of people. We need to change that.
It's like when I look at obesity and stuff, and we're like, right, well, how can we fix it? I was like, but I don't think I can do anything, mate. And I think the whole system needs to change. Otherwise, people are going to continue to get obese, and people are going to continue to have more and more mental health problems.
100%.
And if I look into that, I have mental health problems, and I would give myself anxiety, or I would stress myself out.
You'd stress yourself out. It's like something.
And if I'm going to help people, I need, like you said, stay grounded. So if I think about that stuff, I can't help the people in front of me.
I remember watching a video about meditation, and the guy said, if you teach one person in your life to meditate, you have made a difference, because they will probably go and teach another person, and that's how you change.
That's the way I try to look at it.
You don't get on a camera and go to 1 million people and go, you need to fucking meditate. Go to your fucking bed, and you're basically just it's people. I think that it's silly to think that you can influence. Do you know what I mean? And like, you can have like that influence on people in that sort of long-term way without actually knowing who they are as an individual, and respecting that they have things in their life that might stop them living their life the way that you live your life. Just copying and pasting somebody's life into your life won't mean success, because they have got completely different beliefs, thoughts, emotions, experiences, parents, friends, family, money. Like, it's all different. See, like the whole, you know, if you want to be a billionaire, look at what billionaires do. Like, well, has there ever been a billionaire that's went from where you are to where they are? Ask them what they did. Don't do what they're doing, because they're a billionaire, so they can afford to do this and do that and do the next thing. You can't. You need to go to where they were to get to where they are. But no many people want to talk about that, because a lot of them would be talking about, you know, my dad gave me 5 million to start my business. Do you know what I mean? And like, they all want to be the single parent that came, you know, rags to riches. Like, Stephen Bartlett's a good example. You know, I'm just rags to riches. Why do you speak like that, Stephen? Like, why are you privately educated? Like, I don't buy it. Like, you're selling something that I'm not buying, because I did come from where you're claiming to come from, and I don't recognise anything about where I came from in you.
The more you look at him, the more he's running like the most undercover scam of all time. Even when you look,
I don't even look that deeply into him. I see his clips and I just.
But I'm like that as well. I can just look at someone and go, bollocks.
Aye. But I'm
Bollocks.
also open-minded. Like, I think that being open-minded that Stephen Bartlett or somebody that he has on his podcast might have a message that could be of benefit to somebody, just not to me, you know? And that does come out at the sort of stem, the emotional sort of pinhole, is like, he's a prick. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But that gives you a really good excuse not to go, why does he think like that? Now, if you look into why he's trying to be controversial, it's to get in the algorithm and sell his podcast, then you can just fling it up in the ball and just go into the trash. But I wouldn't waste my time sitting down and giving it any air, because ultimately you're giving it oxygen, and that's what he actually wants. But we need to wrap there.
Right, very true. Right.